My name is Vanessa Porter, and I was sitting at my desk at work on a Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost sent it to voicemail. I was in the middle of reviewing a report that was due by end of day. But something made me hesitate. Something made me answer. "Hello, is this Vanessa Porter?" A woman's voice asked. She sounded professional, but tired. "Yes, this is she. My name is Angela Chun. I'm a social worker with Riverside Memory Care Facility. I'm calling about care arrangements for your parents, Thomas and Diana Porter." My stomach immediately dropped. The report on my screen blurred. "Arrangements? I'm sorry, what are you talking about? My parents aren't dying." There was a brief pause on the other end. "Oh, I should clarify. I'm not calling about end-of-life care. They were moved to our facility approximately 6 months ago. I'm calling to discuss their ongoing care plan and some decisions that need to be made." 6 months. The words didn't make sense. My hand started shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. "I don't understand. Who moved them there? Nobody told me anything about this." "Their daughter did. She has full power of attorney and is listed as their primary emergency contact and decision-maker." My voice came out hollow. "I am their daughter." Another pause. This one was longer and much more uncomfortable. "I apologize for the confusion. I meant your sister, Mallory Porter. She's been handling all of their care arrangements and financial matters." I asked for the address with a voice that didn't sound like my own. I wrote it down on a sticky note with trembling hands. After I hung up, I just sat there staring at my phone. 6 months. My sister had moved our parents into a memory care facility 6 months ago. And she had never told me. I was 12 years old when I first truly understood that I wasn't the priority in my family. It was the night of Mallory's big high school musical. She was 15 and had landed the lead role after months of auditions and rehearsals. My parents were in the front row of the auditorium with flowers and a video camera, recording absolutely everything. I was at home by myself, sitting at the kitchen table putting the finishing touches on a history project about the Civil War. I'd spent 3 full weeks on it. I'd built an incredibly detailed diorama and written a 20-page research report. My teacher had submitted it to a regional competition. The next day, I found out I'd won first place and a $50 savings bond. Nobody asked me about it. Not that day. Not ever. I remembered Mallory's wedding when I was 23. It was enormous and expensive. Over 200 guests. My parents had cried happy tears all day long. They'd looked so incredibly proud standing next to her. When I got married 3 years later, it was just me and my husband at the courthouse downtown. My parents said they were too busy with Mallory's first baby to make the long trip. I remember the photos on my mother's mantle the last time I'd visited. There were dozens and dozens of pictures of Mallory. Professional portraits in expensive frames. Mallory's husband. Mallory's kids at every age and milestone. There was exactly one small photo of me. It was at least 5 years old and shoved in the very back corner behind everything else. I'd learned very early in life that I wasn't the child they celebrated or bragged about. Mallory was everything they'd ever wanted. I was just the backup daughter. I was 26 years old when I accepted a job offer that required moving 4 states away. It was an amazing opportunity with a growing tech company. The salary was nearly double what I was making. There was real room for advancement and growth. It was everything I'd worked toward. My parents seemed genuinely disappointed when I told them about it, but they said they understood and supported my decision. Mallory stayed local. She'd married her high school boyfriend and bought a house exactly 15 minutes from our childhood home. Over the years that followed, the distance between us became so much more than just geographical miles on a map. I visited for major holidays when I could manage it, but my job was incredibly demanding. I worked long hours and traveled frequently for important projects. Mallory was there for absolutely everything. Every single Sunday dinner, without fail. Every birthday celebration. Every minor crisis or doctor's appointment. The narrative slowly formed itself without anyone ever saying the words out loud. Mallory was the devoted, selfless daughter who'd stayed close to family. I was the ambitious one who'd left everyone behind and never looked back. When I got divorced at 35, I was so embarrassed and overwhelmed that I didn't tell my parents for almost 3 months. I was dealing with my own pain and didn't want to burden anyone. When I finally worked up the courage to call and tell them, my mother's response was cold and cutting. "Well, Vanessa, you always were so much more focused on building your career instead of building a real family. I can't say I'm all that surprised this happened." I never, ever forgot those words or the way they made me feel. About 2 years ago, things started changing in small ways that I didn't really notice at first. I called my parents' house on my father's birthday to wish him well. Mallory answered their phone instead of them. "Oh, Dad can't really come to the phone right now," she said in a sweet voice. "He's lying down and resting. But I'll absolutely make sure he calls you back later, okay?" He never called back. This same pattern started happening more and more frequently over the following months. Every time I called their house, Mallory would answer. Mom was napping. Dad wasn't feeling well. They were both tired. She'd pass along my message. I started hearing about doctor appointments and minor health scares only through Mallory, never directly from my parents. "I took them both to see the cardiologist yesterday," she'd mention casually. "I'm managing all their medications now in a daily pill organizer. You know how confused they've been getting lately." I offered multiple times to help in whatever way I could, to fly home for a week, to send money for medical bills, or whatever they needed. "It's totally fine," Mallory always said in that same sweet tone. "I've got absolutely everything covered. You're so far away anyway. Don't worry yourself about it." I sent money, anyway. Checks for bills I assumed they needed help paying. Mallory always thanked me politely, but insisted it really wasn't necessary. I felt constantly guilty for not being physically there, for living so far away, for having a demanding career that kept me too busy. Mallory was right there with them. Mallory was handling everything they needed. I trusted her completely. 6 months ago, I called my parents' home phone number and got an automated message saying the number had been disconnected. My chest immediately tightened with worry. I quickly tried both of their cell phones. Both went straight to voicemail, without ringing. I sent a text message to Mallory. "Mom and Dad's phones aren't working. What's going on? Is everything okay?" She didn't respond for over 6 hours. Then finally, "They're completely fine. Just moved them to a safer living situation recently. Their house was getting to be way too much for them to manage alone. I'll send you their new contact number." She never sent the number. I tried calling Mallory directly over the next several days. No answer. I sent multiple text messages asking for updates and information. Her responses came in short, clipped sentences spread out over many days. "They're still adjusting to the new place. The doctor says this is absolutely what's best for them. I'll have them call you as soon as they're feeling up to it." The unease in my chest grew stronger every single day. But I kept telling myself that Mallory knew what she was doing. She was there physically with them, every day. She understood their needs and situation better than I possibly could from so far away. Then 3 full months passed with absolutely zero direct contact with my parents. That's when I finally booked a flight home. I sent Mallory a text message letting her know I'd be flying in the following weekend to visit Mom and Dad. She called me back within 5 minutes. Her voice was tight and stressed. "That's really not a good time at all, Vanessa. Mom's scheduled to have a medical procedure done. They definitely won't be up for having visitors." I immediately changed my flight to 2 weeks later and let her know. Mallory called again just days before the new flight. "Dad caught a pretty bad cold. The facility isn't allowing any outside visitors right now because it's flu season." I stopped her.
"Wait,
"What facility?
what are you talking about?"
Her voice instantly smoothed out and became calm again. "An assisted living community. It's actually really very nice. They have activities and social programs and everything. They absolutely love it there. But seriously, Vanessa, now's just not a good time for a visit." I pushed back harder this time. "Mallory, I haven't physically seen them in almost an entire year. I'm coming." Her tone changed completely in an instant. It became sharp and cold and accusatory. "And whose fault is that, Vanessa? Who's the one who moved halfway across the country? I hung up on her. My hands were shaking. And I booked the flight anyway for the very next weekend. This time, I didn't tell her I was coming. Immediately after the call from Angela, the social worker, I grabbed my purse and left work without any explanation to anyone. I got in my car and started the 3-hour drive to my hometown. My hands were physically shaking on the steering wheel the entire way. Hospice. Memory care. Power of attorney. The words kept looping endlessly through my mind like a nightmare. I pulled over at a rest stop about an hour into the drive and looked up Riverside Memory Care on my phone. The website showed a clean, modern-looking building with professional photos. But the description of services made my blood run completely cold. Locked memory care unit. Specialized dementia and Alzheimer's care. 24-hour supervision and monitoring. Secure facility. My parents didn't have dementia or Alzheimer's. My father had been sharp as ever the last time I'd actually spoken with him directly. My mother sometimes forgot names or repeated herself, but it was nothing serious. Nothing even remotely close to requiring a locked facility. I got back on the road and kept driving. I arrived at the facility just before evening visiting hours were scheduled to end. The building looked sterile and institutional up close. Very clinical. I walked through the front doors to the reception desk. A nurse in scrubs looked up at me. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see my parents, Thomas and Diana Porter." Something shifted in her face.
Oh,
"Are you Mallory?"
no.
"I'm Vanessa, their other daughter." She hesitated visibly, then slowly picked up the phone on the desk. The nurse led me down a long, sterile hallway. She had to use a key card to unlock the heavy security door. We passed elderly people sitting in wheelchairs along the walls. Some were calling out random words. Some were just staring blankly at nothing. My heart was pounding so hard in my chest, I thought I might actually be sick. She finally stopped at a room with the door partially open and gently pushed it wider. My father was sitting in a chair positioned by the window. He was staring outside at the parking lot, looking at nothing in particular. My mother was lying in the bed closest to the door with her eyes closed, apparently asleep.
Dad.
I said as softly and gently as I could. He turned his head very slowly toward my voice. His face was completely blank at first. Empty. Then something small flickered somewhere deep in his eyes. "Vanessa?" His voice sounded so uncertain.
Confused.
Like he wasn't sure if I was real. I rushed across the room and wrapped my arms around him carefully. He felt so much smaller than I remembered. Thinner. More fragile. Almost breakable. "What are you doing here?" he asked in that same confused tone. Not "I'm so happy to see you." Not "I've missed you so much." Just complete confusion. Like I was some stranger who'd randomly shown up without any warning or invitation. I pulled a chair close to his and sat down, taking his hand. "I came to visit you and Mom. I didn't know you'd moved here. Nobody told me." He looked at me like he genuinely didn't understand the words coming out of my mouth. I sat there with my father holding his thin hand and asked him gently why he was living in this place. He looked slowly around the small, sterile room like he was truly seeing it for the very first time. "Mallory said it was safer here. She said the house had become too much work for us to handle. She said we needed professional help." I kept my voice soft and calm. "Did you want to move here, Dad? Was this your choice?" He looked genuinely confused by the question itself, like the concept of choice hadn't occurred to him. "Mallory said it was what's best for us."
My mother woke up right then.
Her eyes opened slowly, and she saw me sitting there beside the bed. She gave a weak, tired smile.
Oh.
"You came." There was absolutely no warmth in her voice. No happiness or relief or joy. Just a flat, emotionless statement of fact. I stood and moved closer to her bed, reaching for her hand. "Of course I came, Mom. I wanted to see you both." I carefully asked her about their house, about what had happened to it. Her face immediately clouded over with confusion. "Mallory took care of all of that," she said vaguely, waving one hand weakly. "Where did the money from selling the house go?" I asked as gently as I could. She looked over at my father with an almost helpless expression. He looked away toward the window. "Mallory handles all the money now. he said so quietly I almost couldn't hear him. All the finances and bills and everything. Ice-cold fear filled my veins. I forced myself to keep my voice calm and even. Can I see the paperwork? The legal documents about the house sale? My father slowly shook his head. Mallory has everything. All the important papers and documents are with her. I sat there trying desperately to process what I was hearing. My sister had moved them into this locked facility, sold their house without telling me, taken complete control of all their finances and assets. And they didn't seem to understand any of it at all. I left my parents' depressing room and walked quickly back to the nurse's station with my heart pounding. I need to see my parents' medical records and their current care plan, I said firmly. The nurse behind the desk looked visibly uncomfortable. I'm very sorry, but only their designated power of attorney can legally access that kind of information. I'm their daughter, I said, my voice rising slightly. Yes, I understand that. But Mallory Porter is listed in our system as the sole legal decision-maker and primary emergency contact. She has full power of attorney authority over both of them. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Who made that decision? When did that happen? She provided all the necessary legal documents when they were admitted. The documents give her complete authority over all aspects of their medical care and financial matters. I felt my careful control starting to slip away. I need to speak with the facility administrator. Right now. The administrator has already left for the day. You're welcome to come back during regular business hours tomorrow and speak with her then. I started walking toward the exit, my hands balled into fists. Then a younger staff member I'd seen earlier in the hallway quickly pulled me aside near the door when no one was looking. You should know something, she said in a hushed, urgent voice. Your sister told everyone here that you were estranged from your parents. She said you'd been trying to take financial advantage of them. We were all specifically instructed not to give you any information or allow you unsupervised access to them. I felt like I'd been physically punched hard in the stomach. All the air left my lungs. I sat in my car in the dark parking lot and called Mallory with shaking hands. She answered on the very first ring. Her voice was immediately angry. How dare you show up there without telling me first? My own voice was shaking with rage I could barely contain. How dare you put our parents in a locked memory care facility without ever telling me? Her tone turned to absolute ice. They needed professional care, Vanessa. I'm the one who's actually been here taking care of them for years while you were gone. I'm the one handling absolutely everything while you were off living your perfect life. You completely abandoned them. I want to see the power of attorney documents. Right now. She actually laughed. It was cold and bitter. You have absolutely no right to see anything. You're not listed on any of their legal paperwork. I am. I'm the only one they actually trust. What happened to their house? I demanded, my voice getting louder. Where's all the money from the sale? It was sold to pay for their care and medical needs, which you would actually know if you'd ever bothered to be involved in their lives. Where is the money right now, Mallory? That's absolutely none of your business whatsoever. And then she hung up on me. I sat there in the dark car physically shaking with rage and utter disbelief at what was happening. Then I wiped my eyes, took several deep breaths, and started making plans. Early the next morning, I drove straight to the county records office when it opened. I walked up to the clerk at the front desk and asked to see all the property records for my parents' home address. The clerk pulled up the information on her computer screen and turned the monitor so I could see. The house had been officially sold exactly 8 months ago for $520,000. My stomach dropped. I asked where the proceeds from the sale had gone. The clerk scrolled through the digital documents. The money went to an entity called Porter Family Trust, LLC. I asked for more information about that LLC. She typed and clicked for a moment. The LLC was registered solely to Mallory Porter, my sister. My stomach felt like it was filled with ice. I asked to see the complete deed history going back as far as possible. For 40 solid years, that house had been titled in my parents' names. Joint ownership. Then suddenly, exactly 6 months before the sale, the entire property had been transferred completely to Mallory's name only. I requested printed copies of absolutely everything. The clerk hesitated and looked uncomfortable. I probably should let you know, someone specifically requested that these particular records be flagged in our system. Any access requests now have to go through an attorney. Who requested that flag? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. She shook her head. I can't tell you that. I'm sorry, but she didn't have to tell me. I knew exactly who had flagged those records. I hired a private investigator that same afternoon. His name was Malcolm Reed. He specialized in complex financial investigations. I gave him every single piece of information I had and asked him to dig as deep as he possibly could. Exactly 1 week later, he came back to my hotel with a comprehensive report. The house sale, $520,000. Every penny went directly to Mallory's LLC, then immediately into her personal bank accounts. My father's monthly pension, completely rerouted to an account in Mallory's name starting exactly 18 months ago. Every single monthly payment going directly to her instead of him. My parents' joint savings account, $140,000, systematically emptied through a careful series of transfers over a 14-month period. My mother's inheritance from her own mother who'd passed away, $95,000, transferred entirely into Mallory's personal account exactly 14 months ago. Both life insurance policies. The beneficiaries had been changed from each other to listing Mallory as the sole primary beneficiary. Total estimated assets transferred, over $800,000. Every single transfer looked technically legal on paper. Every document appeared to have been properly signed by my parents. I stared at those numbers on the pages until my vision blurred, and they stopped making sense. This wasn't simple neglect or confusion or misunderstanding. This was calculated, methodical, systematic theft. I drove back to the facility the very next morning and walked in demanding to see my parents immediately. The administrator herself met me at the front desk before I could get any further. Her face was sympathetic but absolutely firm. I'm very sorry, Miss Porter. There's been a legal restraining order filed against you. My ears started ringing. What did you just say? Your sister filed an emergency restraining order yesterday. She claims you've been harassing the family and attempting financial exploitation of your vulnerable parents. You're legally not allowed on the premises at all pending a court hearing. I stood there unable to speak or move. I somehow made it back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and called Mallory with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. You actually filed a restraining order against me? I could barely get the words out. Her voice was perfectly, coldly calm. You're clearly unstable, Vanessa. Showing up unannounced like that, making completely wild accusations, trying to access their financial accounts and medical records. I'm simply protecting our parents from you. You stole from them, I said through clenched teeth. I have complete legal authority over their care and finances. You have absolutely nothing. Walk away, Vanessa. You've always been extremely good at that. I hung up and sat there crying. Then I wiped my face roughly, took a long, deep breath, and made a firm decision. I absolutely was not walking away. Not this time. Not ever. I found an elder law attorney named Stuart Brennan through an online search and review sites. I brought absolutely everything to his office. The financial records from Malcolm's investigation, the complete timeline, the restraining order, every single piece of documentation I had. Stuart listened very carefully while I explained the entire situation from beginning to end. When I finally finished, he leaned back slowly in his leather chair. This is absolutely textbook undue influence and financial exploitation of vulnerable adults, he said seriously. He patiently explained that even if all the legal documents appeared technically valid on their face, if my parents were confused, coerced, manipulated, or unduly influenced into signing them, all of those transfers could potentially be challenged and reversed in court. I need you to understand something important, he said, looking directly at me. Are you fully prepared for a very long, difficult fight? Your sister has substantial resources now. Your parents' resources. She can afford to hire very good lawyers. I don't care how long it takes or how hard it gets, I said firmly. Stuart nodded with approval.
Good.
First, we file a detailed report with Adult Protective Services. Then we file a petition with the court to remove her as power of attorney. Then we go after every dollar she took. I signed the retainer agreement right there in his office. The real fight was just beginning. Stuart helped me prepare and file an extremely detailed report with Adult Protective Services. We included absolutely everything we had. The financial records clearly showing all the transfers. The timeline of when my parents were systematically isolated. The sudden placement in a locked facility. Everything. An investigator was officially assigned to the case within just 3 days. His name was Carl Martinez, and he'd been investigating elder abuse cases for over 15 years. He'd seen everything. He visited the facility completely unannounced. He interviewed multiple staff members. He carefully reviewed my parents' medical records and care plans in detail. He met with my parents separately in private, without Mallory present or aware. According to the notes in his official report, my father seemed genuinely scared and deeply confused. My mother seemed disoriented and uncertain. Neither one of them could clearly or coherently explain why they'd signed over all their assets to Mallory. Carl's official report concluded there were credible and serious concerns of financial exploitation and undue influence of vulnerable adults. The case was immediately forwarded to the state's Financial Crimes Unit for further investigation. Stuart called me that evening to tell me the news. "This is very good, Vanessa. Extremely good. They're taking this very seriously." For the first time in weeks, I felt a tiny flicker of real hope. Mallory hired an attorney, an extremely expensive one with a strong reputation. He filed multiple motions claiming I was nothing more than a disgruntled sibling trying to steal from my incapacitated parents. He submitted character references from neighbors and friends calling Mallory a devoted, selfless, loving caregiver who'd sacrificed everything. He provided copies of old emails where I'd declined invitations to visit or said I was too busy with work to help over the years. He systematically painted me as absent, selfish, career-obsessed, and opportunistic. The restraining order hearing happened 2 weeks later. Mallory cried genuine tears on the witness stand. She talked at length about how she'd sacrificed absolutely everything to care for our aging parents while I was selfishly focused on my career. She said she was only trying to protect them from a sister who never truly cared. I sat there in complete silence, absolutely furious, but carefully controlled. The judge didn't dismiss the restraining order completely, but he did modify it significantly. I was now allowed supervised visitation with my parents only. Someone from the facility had to be present at all times. It felt like losing, like she was winning. Stuart gently put his hand on my shoulder as we left the courtroom. "This isn't over. We're just getting started. Trust me." I desperately wanted to believe him. Stuart began systematically deposing staff members from the facility. One nurse finally admitted under oath that Mallory had brought our parents in, initially claiming they were dangerously confused and could absolutely not live safely alone anymore. But Stuart had obtained copies of their complete medical records from their longtime family doctor from 6 months before the move. The doctor's detailed notes clearly showed normal, expected age-related cognitive decline. Nothing whatsoever that would require or justify memory care placement. Nothing even remotely close. When Stuart contacted the doctor and explained where my parents had actually been placed, the doctor was absolutely stunned. "I never recommended that level of restrictive care," he said firmly. "Not even remotely. This is completely inappropriate." Stuart also subpoenaed complete phone records. In the 6 months immediately before my parents were moved to the facility, Mallory had called their home phone over 40 times every single day. Every day, without exception. Then suddenly, immediately after the move, she changed all their phone numbers and completely cut off all their outside contact. The pattern was absolutely clear and deeply damning. She'd systematically isolated them,
Confused them.
controlled every aspect of their lives. The APS investigator added everything to his constantly growing file. For the first time since this nightmare began, I started to feel real, genuine hope. Stuart subpoenaed complete records from my parents' bank going back 2 full years. A bank manager was brought in for an official deposition. She clearly remembered Mallory bringing my parents into the branch multiple times over the course of about a year. They seemed very confused and uncertain, she testified carefully. Mallory did almost all of the talking. She explained to them what documents they were signing. Stuart asked if my parents had ever come to the bank alone without Mallory.
No.
Never. It was always with Mallory present. He asked if they had ever asked any questions about where their money was actually going. The banker hesitated, looking uncomfortable.
Yes.
Once, Mr. Porter specifically asked where a particularly large transfer was going. Mallory told him very clearly it was going into a special trust account set up specifically for their future care needs. He seemed to accept that answer and relax. My hands clenched into tight fists under the table. There was no trust. There never had been a trust. Every single dollar went straight into Mallory's personal accounts. She'd looked our father right in his confused eyes and lied directly to his face. And he believed her completely, because she was his daughter. Stuart looked at me across the table. His expression was grim but absolutely determined. "We've got her now," he said quietly but confidently. Stuart hired a highly respected geriatric psychiatrist to conduct a comprehensive evaluation of my parents. The doctor spent several hours with each of them over multiple different sessions. He thoroughly reviewed their complete medical history and every medication they were currently taking. His official report was clear, detailed, and absolutely damning. My parents showed mild cognitive decline that was completely consistent with normal, expected aging. But they absolutely did not have dementia. They did not have Alzheimer's. They did not have any condition whatsoever that would medically require or justify locked memory care. He stated clearly they'd been placed in an overly restrictive environment that was likely making their confusion significantly worse. But the absolute worst part was what he discovered in their medication records. After Mallory took complete control, they'd both been started on several powerful medications that specifically cause confusion, disorientation, and sedation. Medications they did not actually need for any legitimate medical reason. The doctor's professional opinion was absolutely clear. They'd been intentionally kept in a confused, sedated state. "She didn't just steal from them," Stuart said when he showed me the report. His face was tight with anger. "She deliberately diminished them mentally, to cover up what she was doing." I felt physically sick. Stuart filed an emergency petition to immediately remove Mallory as guardian and power of attorney. The guardianship hearing was absolutely brutal. Mallory's lawyer viciously attacked every single aspect of my life. My divorce. My physical absence. My career focus. My lack of local involvement over the years. Mallory sobbed real tears on the witness stand. She talked at length about sacrifice and unconditional love and devoted caregiving. But then Stuart methodically presented all the evidence. The financial records showing over $800,000 transferred directly to Mallory's personal accounts. The medical records definitively proving my parents didn't need or require memory care. The timeline clearly showing systematic, deliberate isolation. The unnecessary medications causing confusion and sedation. The banker's testimony about the lies. The psychiatrist's comprehensive evaluation. Mallory's face went completely pale. Her lawyer objected over and over again. The judge listened to absolutely everything very carefully. Then he looked directly at Mallory with a hard expression. "Where exactly is the $520,000 from the sale of your parents' home?" She stammered badly. It's in accounts.
Special accounts.
For their care. "I want you to show me these accounts right now." She couldn't. She had nothing to show. Because there were no accounts. The money was completely gone. Spent. The judge immediately ordered a complete forensic audit and suspended all of Mallory's authority pending the investigation results. The forensic accountant's comprehensive report came back exactly 2 weeks later. It was absolutely devastating to Mallory's case. Over $800,000 transferred from my parents to Mallory over an 18-month period. Almost none of it had actually gone to their care. Mallory had bought herself a new house, 2 brand new cars, paid off her husband's substantial business debts, taken expensive vacations to Europe and the Caribbean. The memory care facility cost $4,000 per month. She'd been paying it directly from my parents' remaining Social Security checks, not from any of the money she'd actually taken. The accountant also discovered something else crucial. 2 of the signature pages on important transfer documents had been expertly forged. The signatures weren't real. Mallory's high-priced lawyer immediately withdrew from her case. The state attorney general's office got directly involved. They filed serious criminal charges: financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, theft by deception,
Fraud. Forgery.
Mallory was arrested at her home. The story made the local news that evening. I watched it from my hotel room, feeling completely numb. Mallory was released on bond 2 days later. She called me that night. She was crying absolutely hysterically. "Please, Vanessa. Please, I'm begging you. Tell them this was all just a terrible misunderstanding. I was honestly trying to help them. You know I love them. Please help me." My voice came out cold, flat, and completely emotionless. "You stole from them. You locked them in a facility they didn't need. You erased me completely from their lives. You did all of this deliberately." "I'll lose absolutely everything," she sobbed desperately. "My house, my family, everything. Please." "You already lost everything that actually mattered," I said quietly. "You just didn't realize it yet." I hung up on her. The criminal trial took 4 long months. Mallory eventually pleaded guilty to avoid any prison time. She was sentenced to 5 years of supervised probation. She was ordered to repay every single cent she'd taken. She was permanently banned from ever serving as anyone's power of attorney, guardian, or fiduciary again. Her reputation was completely destroyed. Her marriage fell apart under the enormous weight of it all. She lost the house she'd bought with stolen money. I didn't feel any satisfaction or victory watching her fall. I just felt completely exhausted. I moved my parents out of Riverside Memory Care as quickly as legally possible. I found a beautiful, warm assisted living community near where I lived. It wasn't locked or institutional. It was comfortable, homey, and welcoming. They were immediately taken off all the unnecessary medications Mallory had put them on. Slowly, over weeks and then months, they started becoming more present, more alert, more engaged, more like their actual selves. One quiet afternoon, my father reached over and took my hand in his. "I didn't understand what was really happening," he said, his eyes filling with genuine tears. "Mallory kept telling us over and over that you didn't want to be involved anymore, that you were too busy with your important career." I believed her completely. I squeezed his thin hand gently. "I'm here now, Dad. I'm not going anywhere ever again." My mother cried and apologized over and over. I forgave them both. They'd been victims too, manipulated and controlled. The stolen money was slowly being recovered through court-ordered liens and mandatory payment plans. It would take many years, but it was actually happening. I visited them at least twice every single week. Sometimes more. We were carefully rebuilding what Mallory had so deliberately broken. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was real. And it was ours. I didn't set out to destroy my sister's entire life. I set out to protect my parents from harm. But when someone weaponizes love and caregiving to systematically steal, control, and completely erase you from your own family, the truth becomes your only real weapon. Mallory genuinely thought she'd gotten away with it all. She thought I'd stay far away, stay silent, stay buried under guilt and distance.
She was wrong about me.
I didn't fight her with anger or cruelty or revenge. I fought her with careful documentation, incredible patience, and the legal system. I let the truth speak for itself. And the truth was so much louder than any lie she'd ever told. People ask me sometimes if I feel bad about what happened to her, if I regret any of it. I don't. Not for a single second. She made every single choice that led directly to her downfall. I just finally stopped letting her get away with it. My parents are safe now. Truly safe. I see them multiple times every week. We have dinner together. We watch old movies. We talk about everything. We'll never get back the years Mallory stole from us. Those are gone forever. But we have right now. And that's enough. Mallory is gone from our lives completely. Not because I pushed her out or punished her. Because she destroyed her own place in this family. I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth. And in the end, that was absolutely everything.